Welcome to another episode of the Ad Project Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Maria Hewitt, and I'm joined by Tony Miller.
Morning, Maria. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Tony?
Doing pretty good.
And Tony, what is your title these days?
My title is Director of Programmatic Strategy.
I used to call Tony the Duke of DSP because he's headed up our DSP efforts for several years, and now it's programmatic because we don't just do Amazon DSP.
Right.
So Duke doesn't quite work, but he is still the Duke of DSP.
We've moved on from that.
Yeah, the Prince of Programmatic didn't sound quite, I don't know, I didn't like that as much, so yeah, we've moved on, but...
I'm just Tony.
Yeah, just
That
Tony,
works.
yeah. So maybe you can give us a little background of Ad Advance, what you do.
Yeah, definitely. Goodness. It's kind of crazy. I'll be celebrating 5 years here just in a couple of days. It's wild to think of the evolution on Amazon at Ad Advance here with my own growth. It's been a fun ride, but yeah, I mean, thinking back to the early days, starting with being an account manager, managing sponsored ads. I think sponsored display was like brand new. I don't think there was video ads on Amazon even. Like sponsor brand video was emerging as well. It was kind of a crazy, fun ride and experience. A couple of years into the role, we started looking more heavily into DSP, got our feet wet there, and it's kind of history since then. You know, I really dove in head first there. I love the strategic approach that you have to take with every unique brand, product that comes about, the unique goals that everybody's trying to achieve here. But yeah, it's been super fun over the last couple of years, watching the team grow, watching our efforts grow, our capabilities, what we can do and offer our clients. It's been a fun ride. Yeah.
And everything I know is thanks to Tony, because he was actually my mentor when I started at Ad Advance. So,
Goodness. Well,
Yeah.
we'll hope that's a good thing.
yeah, I think so. You gave me such a good foundation. And
Awesome.
yeah, so today's episode is going to really focus on Amazon DSP 101. So kind of the basics of what is Amazon DSP, why you should care, and how you get started. So we will dive deeper in subsequent episodes where we'll focus on video, specifically audiences, things like that, strategy. But this is really the Amazon DSP 101, how to get started.
Yeah, right. Try to keep it high level.
Yeah. So if you are maybe new to Amazon ads or you're really focused on sponsored ads right now, this is a great episode. So Tony, let's start. What is Amazon DSP?
Yeah. So I mean, a DSP is acronym for demand side platform. So imagine you're a brand and you want to buy ad space online. You kind of think of it similarly to putting up billboards on the highway, right? I want to go around and show ads across the internet for various reasons, targeting people. I'm not going to go out individually to every single website or app or streaming service and say, hey, I want to serve ads here, and negotiate a deal and agree that we're going to run ads on their site or platform. A DSP does that all for you. It's automated. It's incredibly fast, the amount of decisions that it's making for you, but it's kind of your one-stop shop. You provide the inputs. Hey, here's what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to accomplish, the audiences that I'm trying to target, and here's where I want to target them, roughly speaking. The DSP is going to go in and say, okay, great, thanks for those inputs. I'm going to go out there and find you some good, relevant ad space in front of the right audience that you've selected.
Mm-hmm. And obviously we're talking about Amazon's DSP, but demand-side platforms, there's many of them. What are some other big ones that people would know of?
Yeah. The Trade Desk is by and large the biggest DSP out there. There are other DSPs, Google's got their DV360 platform. Yahoo's got a DSP as well. I feel like I've heard of many emerging DSPs over the last couple of months as well. Everybody's trying to become part of the game, it seems, lately.
And we're talking display, video, audio ads.
Yep. Display, video, audio. So it's not just, hey, here's a static image or like a GIF kind of style creative that you'd see on a website. So like weather.com, for example, you're going to see banner ads across that site. Those are display ads. When you're watching a streaming service, Hulu, Netflix, Disney Plus, any of those are going to be a place where video ads can show. Those are streaming TV or connected TV specifically. But then there's also, audio ads that you're listening to your favorite podcast or catching up on the latest and greatest tunes through Discover Weekly, perhaps. There's all sorts of mediums, all sorts of places we can serve these ads.
So when I think of Amazon ads, I kind of think of like two pillars, and they definitely intermingle, but I think of, sponsored ads and then DSP. How are they different?
Goodness. Easiest way to talk about that is, sponsored ads, you're bidding on keywords or product targets. On a DSP, you're bidding on audiences. You're targeting audiences there. So, with sponsored ads, there's already usually an intent, a purpose. Somebody goes to a site, key in a search term, they have an idea what they're looking for. If it's a more broad generic term, maybe they don't totally have their mind made up yet. They're still considering or doing some research, or, perhaps it's a branded search and like, hey, I know what I want. I'm going to buy this from this particular brand. That's that. With a DSP, like I said, you're targeting an audience. You're picking and choosing audiences that you're going after for a particular reason. Whether they have visited your page, they haven't made a purchase yet, they've been to your website, you want to draw them back, sign up for a subscription or an email newsletter. Tons of different goals and objectives here. But yeah, boils down to, bidding on keywords and product targets, a CPC, a cost per click basis, versus a CPM, a cost per milli basis, where you're buying impressions, targeting audiences.
And, maybe we buried the lead here a little bit, but those audiences, what makes Amazon's DSP so good,
right,
are those audiences,
totally.
And the fact that you're able to harness Amazon's first party data.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild thinking of, how absolutely massive Amazon is. It's crazy to think, millions and millions of people buying tons of stuff every single day. That's so much rich, useful data that brands can harness, all the way from interests, lifestyle, audiences, demographics, down to your particular data from your brand on Amazon, views, purchases of your products, lookalike audiences of your products. It's not like technically your 1P data, it's Amazon's, but it's like your 1P data on Amazon, really. Yeah.
Here's a fun little exercise if you're thinking about like, well, how much do my purchases really say about me? Go into like ChatGPT and put in your last 10 purchases on Amazon and say, based on these recent purchases on Amazon, who do you think I am? It is better than a horoscope. It will really grill it down. So, that's just an idea. That's how they're building their audiences is, your everyday purchases that really tell you where you are in your life and, things like that.
Yeah, totally.
So let's talk key benefits for brand growth. Why is DSP worth considering for brands?
Yeah, there's, a couple of different reasons, and it really just depends on what your goal is that you're trying to accomplish. But, we've got lower funnel initiatives where, perhaps you've got a pile of traffic coming to your website or to your product detail page on Amazon. There's people that aren't purchasing yet. Let's get back in front of those shoppers. Let's re-engage them, get them to come back and make a purchase, right? They showed an interest at some point. They clicked on your product, whether it was, an organic listing or a sponsored ad on Amazon. They made it there for a reason. Let's re-engage them, get them to come back and purchase. Perhaps you've got a more expensive item, like a $300-$400 purchase. That's going to take a little bit more time to consider that purchase than, hey, this is $10. A lot easier to pull the trigger on a purchase there. But I think, Amazon sponsored ads are really only going to take you so far. And like I mentioned before, with keyword targeting, somebody's already got an intention, whether they have just a base idea like, hey, I want a water bottle, or more specific, like, I want a, wide mouth water bottle that's got a blue cap on it and it's a green bottle, or even very specific, like I want an Nalgene water bottle. Somebody's already got an intent there. There's a purpose for their search. At a point, there's only going to be so much search to go around, and you've got to start in a way, generating your own demand, letting the people know about your product, about your brand, why it's awesome, why they should consider it. And that's, I think, the real power of DSP is getting in front of new to brand eyeballs.
Getting ahead of that intent. Something else I really like about Amazon DSP, and because I started as an account manager, Tom was my mentor, and once I started learning more about Amazon DSP, I really loved managing those accounts because of the creative flexibility, and like there's just so much more creativity in like the strategy and compared to sponsored ads. Even though I would say over the years, sponsored ads, there is much more flexibility and, you know, still plenty to do there. But with DSP, you know, the video and the rec creatives or the display ads and audio ads, I just think I love that from my creative side, the storytelling aspect of it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really fun exercise for me to try to consider, you know, whether it's a lead that we're talking to or an existing client who wants to explore DSP for the first time. And you really dive into like the psychological aspect of it, of like, okay, put myself in the shopper's shoes. How do I envision myself finding a product like this or becoming interested, or, you know, what ways of targeting a shopper might be more impactful given the product at hand? It's totally unique from product to product, from brand to brand. It's a really fun exercise. And, you know, as you get in there and start testing and learning, trying new ideas, sometimes you'll surprise yourself and just like, man, I never thought this was going to work, but hey, this is a cool opportunity. Let's lean more into it.
I love the audience building and layering,
Totally.
you know, because it is very psychological. But that kind of brings up another point, folks who are, you know, well-versed in sponsored ads. You might be like, well, some of this you can do a sponsored display,
right?
Particularly audience targeting and, you know, creative flexibility, things like that. So sponsored display versus Amazon DSP, like when and why do you use the different ad types and how are they different?
Yeah, I mean, there's, you know, Amazon made sponsored display audience targeting available for the masses, right? I would say if it's something that you're curious about trying or testing out or dipping your toes in a little bit to programmatic world, let's try out some sponsored display. You know, you can do some retargeting, repurchase campaigns, you know, targeting people that looked at your product but didn't purchase, or people that previously purchased if you've got a consumable product, for example. Or, you know, if you're saying, hey, I want to get in there and see if I can generate some awareness, get in front of some, you know, in-market audiences, you can definitely do that as well. It's a light version of DSP, we'll say. You know, there's only so many capabilities available within sponsored display that you don't have access to that we do with DSP. So, you know, just back to the audiences, I guess, you know, if you are thinking about doing some prospecting or, you know, an awareness play, getting your brand out in front of new to brand eyeballs, with sponsored display, it's a little bit more limiting where you can kind of pick and choose these audiences, but you're not able to layer and stack them. You know, you can pick an audience of somebody that's in market for tennis equipment, big tennis player, big tennis fan here. So that's me. But that's really it. I can't layer other audiences over top of it and say, hey, this audience is massive of people that are shopping for tennis equipment. I don't have that much ad budget to reach, you know, a fraction of that even. I can't layer and stack audiences and get more granular like I can with DSP. And I guess a little bit more on that, like with Amazon's DSP, you can take multiple audience groups and overlay them, put them together. And it really becomes like a Venn diagram effect where your target audience at the end of the day becomes that small overlapping portion of the larger audiences that you're throwing together.
And what a great way to better understand your customers and shoppers. When you're able to layer and stack like that and you're able to test, you can really get specific and see like where your products and your messaging resonate the best.
Yeah, totally. I mean, even, you know, like when it comes to demographics, targeting men versus women for particular products that are more geared towards men or men's health per se, or women or women's health, something along those lines. Like, you know, some of it comes down to, hey, logically, who is my target audience? I may have data that I've gathered from my website or other insights that I've gathered to show who my ideal shopper is.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to just go out there and say, hey, I'm targeting all of these people. There's 10, 15 million people in a particular audience.
That's not efficient.
No, definitely. You're kind of like covering your eyes and just throwing darts,
So sponsored display is a good stepping stone. If you haven't, if you're interested in display advertising, start there, and then
Totally.
move on to DSP. So when is a brand ready for DSP? Because that's not really a one size fits all.
No, yeah, and it's exactly. It's incredibly hard to just take, a box and throw that around any particular brand and say, hey, here's the qualifications. You got to check all these boxes in order to say, yep, you're ready to dive into Amazon's DSP. Not quite. So there's no like, hard set rules here or anything like that. But I think, the typical approach that we're going to take and suggest is to feel like you're kind of maxing out or capping out what you're doing with Amazon sponsored ads. That's going to be where you're closest to purchase intent, really regardless of the keywords or search terms that shoppers are inputting, whether they are the really broad water bottle or all the way down to a branded term like a Nalgene. That's so close to the point of purchase. That's where you're going to find the most incremental sales with your ad dollars to a point. You reach a point where, hey, I feel like I'm doing everything that I can with sponsored ads. The more investment I try to put into that, maybe it's reaching more broad keywords. And I'm seeing diminishing returns. Let's try something different here. Perhaps it's a consumable product as well that you're selling, something that's got high repeat purchase rates, really looking at building lifetime value. Brands like that, it's incredibly important to acquire a new to brand shopper and also understand, what is the lifetime value that these shoppers are going to bring to my brand. But Amazon's DSP is an incredible way to not only get in front of new to brand shoppers, but also engage shoppers that are considering your competitors' products, shoppers that are considering your products. But then once somebody's in brand, you want to make sure they stay in brand too. We want them to be brand loyal. We want to build lifetime value. So now we can re-engage people who may have lapsed on purchasing.
So you have a strong sponsored ads foundation, and then you're ready to move up funnel, essentially, to continue feeding that engagement down the funnel.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, and it's an investment, depending on whether you are trying to retarget people or if you're looking to go after new to brand audiences. It's a bit of an investment that you're doing. I wouldn't say taking a leap of faith here. It's all data backed. It makes sense. It works. There's proven records of this working. So, getting in and testing is something that I would say, hey, I've got a good foundation on sponsored ads. I feel like I need to be doing something more. I want to start driving my own traffic to the platform. I really want to re-engage people that have considered my product, but I don't quite know how necessarily, or I've utilized sponsored display. I'm seeing some good success here after I've tested it out for a couple months. Let's see what we can do with DSP, where we've got more knobs and levers of control.
Well, and in addition to those more levers and just being a platform for sending out your ads, it also provides more sophisticated measurement too. So like as you move up the funnel, you're able to measure what's making an impact. And of course, Amazon Marketing Cloud, we've talked about on the podcast, but those work hand in hand for sure.
Totally. Yeah. Amazon Marketing Cloud has been awesome. I mean, you think about display ads and particularly like the upper funnel awareness ads. How do you really measure that, right? You're making a branded play, you're making a longer term investment and saying, hey, I want to get out in front of these new to brand shoppers that may not know about me, may not know about my product. You're not necessarily going to see an immediate return from that. I think a great example there would be like insurance companies. You and I can probably rattle off a half dozen insurance jingles right now if we wanted to.
Jake from State Farm.
Love you, Jake. Uh, but they're not looking for you to like, oh man, I need to go buy insurance right now. I need to, swap my auto policy and my home and policy like that. But it's more creating that awareness for when it comes time for you to make an action like that. Hey, I bought a new car. I'm bought a new house. Congratulations. You got to consider insurance at that point. Okay, now I've come back. Now I can make that connection. I've been exposed to this brand. Let's sign up insurance there. So it's a longer term play there.
I feel like when I think about brands that have found success with DSP, it's not only that they're willing to invest in upper funnel, but then it's also like this shift in mindset and their strategy, and that the KPIs are different in the upper funnel, and understanding that it is a long-term play. And it can't just be ROAS from last touch attribution.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, identifying those key KPIs is, a base foundation of running Amazon's DSP. You got to go into it with intent. What am I trying to accomplish? What are my goals here? You look at upper funnel campaigns, and it's a lot of times about reach and awareness, right? I'm not looking for an immediate sale. I'm not going to go out and switch insurance right now and buy that after I saw a commercial. But I'm prepping people for when that time comes. What kind of click-through rates am I seeing there? How likely am I to get somebody to land on my detail page? What do those base interactions look like? Those are initial signs of saying, hey, this person's interested. They're leaned into my message, to what I'm trying to say. And once they've made it to your detail page, for example, now you're more, okay, how do I re-engage that person and get them to purchase? They've considered me. We're retargeting them now. We're looking at sales. We're looking at ROAS. And that's where, it's kind of the 1-2 punch there of awareness and then re-engagement. Hey, now I've got a sale. Cool. What's my efficiency for doing that? That's where Amazon Marketing Cloud comes and kind of ties the whole picture together to where, now we can go back and accurately put kind of a value on those upper funnel campaigns and say, well, with attribution, the way that attribution is working, it's giving credit to whichever ad was the last interaction. So an upper funnel campaign, you might get in front of new to brand audiences, right? And they then go to Amazon. Maybe they search a category term for your product. They might search your brand name, but now they click on a sponsored product ad. That sponsored product ad is going to get the credit for the sale should you make a purchase. The DSP ad spent money on impressions. Cool, But with Amazon's Marketing Cloud, we can tie this whole picture together and really give credit and say, hey, that person's first exposure was actually, this upper funnel campaign where we first reached out to them. They eventually came and made a purchase. There's credit, there's credibility, and, you can roughly assign a value to that, those upper funnel campaigns.
It helps you justify those upper funnel plays.
Totally.
So, Tony, someone's listening right now and they're like, oh, this sounds great. How do you get started with Amazon's DSP?
Yeah. So there's, a couple different options. Historically, you've had to have, a really large budget that you want to put down every month, and you can approach Amazon. And Amazon would manage your DSP ads. I think it was like, when we first started, somewhere in the ballpark of like 25 or 30 grand a month. That jumped up to 50 grand a month that you had to commit. If you're more don't have those types of budgets out of the gate, you can get in contact with an agency or an agency partner there, like Ad Advance, where we are able to get people in the door for a lot lower of a budget commitment there. But yeah, you need to have kind of access to Amazon's DSP. You need to have a seat at the table, if you will. Find a good agency partner like Ad Advance to interact with and start exploring what DSP could look like for your brand.
Test and then scale.
Exactly. Always testing and learning.
Well, we've just scratched the surface of Amazon DSP.
There's so much more.
This was truly 101. But, there's particularly some recent updates that we'll dive deeper in future episodes, like Amazon Ads just struck deals with Disney and Roku. So those were big headlines. Yes. So we'll go through that on an episode. Obviously, there's a lot of strategies we can talk through, use cases, things like that. So all in the future. Stay tuned if you want to learn more. Tony, the Duke of DSP.
Stop.
Also, the Director of Programmatic Strategy here at Advance. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
You'll be back.
Definitely.
Hot seat was comfortable, right?
It's not too bad, Holly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep,
we're
yep.
doing all right.
All right. Well, be sure to follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn. We're always sharing updates, and we'll see you for the next episode of the Ad Project Podcast. Thanks for joining.